The KGB candidate. You do not apply to the KGB. The KGB finds you. You are typically a young man between 18 and 25, a loyal member of the Komsomol Youth League, with a spotless family history and no relatives who were ever arrested, exiled, or marked as enemies of the state. A man you have never met introduces himself through a mutual contact. The conversations start casually, questions about your beliefs, your ambitions, your loyalty to the Soviet cause. You do not realize these are interviews. You do not know that every word you say is being assessed against a checklist that exists only inside a classified file with your name on it. If you pass, you receive an invitation. Not a letter, not an official document. Just a conversation that ends with a time and an address and an understanding that you do not speak about this to anyone. Not your parents, not your closest friend, not the girl you are seeing. Your old life ends the moment you say yes, and the new one has not yet been explained to you. The junior operative. You arrive at the Dzerzhinsky Higher School in Moscow, named after Felix Dzerzhinsky, the Iron Founder of the Soviet secret police, and you immediately understand that this is not like any school you have attended. Training lasts between 2 and 4 years. You study Marxist-Leninist ideology not as philosophy, but as a lens through which every human behavior must be interpreted and judged. You learn surveillance, how to follow a target through a crowded city without ever being seen, how to photograph documents in under 30 seconds, how to set up a dead drop in a public square that looks like nothing more than a carelessly dropped piece of trash. You are taught interrogation psychology, not the crude methods of a prison guard, but the sophisticated science of dismantling a person's resistance through isolation, sleep deprivation, and the precise manipulation of hope. Languages are drilled into you with an intensity that would break most students because the KGB understood that language was not simply communication, it was access, and access was the only currency that truly mattered in the intelligence world. But the most important thing they teach you here cannot be written in any textbook. They teach you to see every human being as one of three things: an asset you can use, a threat you must neutralize, or a tool you can shape. Everything else is irrelevant. The lieutenant. You graduate and receive your first real posting, and almost nothing about it resembles the spy films you grew up watching. You are assigned to an internal directorate, which means your first job is not hunting foreign agents on the streets of Vienna or Berlin. Your first job is watching Soviet citizens, your own people, in your own country. You are given a territory, perhaps a university, perhaps a factory district, perhaps a community of scientists working on something the state considers sensitive. Your job is to build a network of informants inside that territory and report everything unusual upward through the chain. You attend social gatherings and build friendships that are not friendships. You make people trust you completely while trusting no one yourself. You file reports constantly, detailed documents about conversations overheard, relationships observed, behaviors that deviated even slightly from the expected norm. Most days are not dramatic. Most days are hours spent waiting in a parked car, evenings at dinners where you're listening instead of talking, mornings spent reading intercepted correspondence looking for the single sentence that justifies escalation. But something is happening beneath the surface of all this tedium. You are learning how power actually functions in the Soviet system, not through ideology or military force, but through information. And you are beginning to understand that the man who controls the most information controls everything. The Starshine Lieutenant. You are promoted after demonstrating reliability and results, and now the work changes in a way that feels significant. You are no longer just collecting information. You are running agents, managing a network of informants and assets whose identities exist only in your memory and in a locked file that only you and your direct superior can access. You might be tasked with monitoring a prominent dissident whose writings have begun attracting attention in Western newspapers. You cultivate sources close to that person, a neighbor, a colleague, a relative who is struggling financially and needs a quiet arrangement that helps them pay their bills in exchange for regular conversations with you. They do not fully understand what they have become. You do, and you carry that knowledge quietly. You are now eligible for foreign postings, the most coveted assignments in the entire KGB structure. Operating abroad under diplomatic cover means posing as a cultural attaché or a trade representative, while your real job is recruiting foreign nationals, stealing classified documents, and running operations against intelligence services that are trying just as hard to destroy you as you are trying to destroy them. The pressure is unlike anything you experienced at the domestic level. Every agent you run is a liability. If one of them breaks, gets caught, or decides to flip and work for the other side, the consequences flow directly back to you. The KGB does not forgive officers who lose their networks through carelessness. The Capitan. Reaching this rank means the organization has decided you are a genuine asset, rather than simply a trained instrument, and the difference matters enormously in how you are treated and what you are trusted with. You are placed in charge of a small operational unit, overseeing several junior officers and their respective networks. The ground-level work is now beneath your official responsibilities. Instead, you plan operations, review intelligence from multiple sources, and make decisions about resource allocation and target prioritization. If you are posted abroad at this level, you are likely the senior KGB officer for a smaller country, or a deputy resident in a larger one, meaning you carry the full weight of the Soviet intelligence operation for that region on your shoulders. Your personal life looks radically different from what ordinary Soviet citizens experience. You have access to special stores that carry foreign goods unavailable to the general population. You have better housing, a reliable car, and a particular kind of safety that comes from everyone around you, knowing exactly who signs your paycheck and what happens to people who cause problems for men like you. But something darker has settled into your psychology by this point. You know too much. You have been involved in operations that will never appear in any official record. You have made decisions that ended careers, destroyed families, and in certain cases, ended lives. And you are aware, with a clarity that never quite leaves you, that the same system that gave you everything you have can remove it all without warning, because you have watched it happen to people who thought they were just as untouchable as you feel right now. The mayor. This is where many KGB careers either reach their ceiling or make the leap into real institutional power, and the difference between those two outcomes often comes down to a single factor: who in the upper ranks has decided to invest in your future. As a major, you are a department head or senior analyst within one of the KGB's main directorates, and the nature of the work has shifted almost entirely away from field operations and towards strategic intelligence. You are reading reports from dozens of operatives across multiple regions and synthesizing them into assessments that climb all the way to the top of the Soviet command structure. You brief generals. Occasionally, you brief party officials. Your analysis directly shapes Soviet foreign policy decisions, military posture, and internal security priorities. If you are in the First Chief Directorate, the branch responsible for foreign intelligence, you are overseeing active operations across entire continents, managing officer networks spanning Western Europe, North America, Asia, and the developing world where the Cold War was being fought, through proxies and influence campaigns rather than open conflict. If you are in the Second Chief Directorate, you are running domestic counterintelligence at a scale that makes your early career postings look like neighborhood watch duty. The bureaucratic politics at this level are vicious in a way that the field never prepared you for. Everyone at this rank is competing for the same limited number of positions above them, and the methods used in that competition are not entirely different from the methods used in actual intelligence operations. The podpolkovnik, lieutenant colonel, is the rank at which you become genuinely dangerous to the outside world in a way that goes beyond individual operations or regional networks. You are now a senior figure within a directorate, with authority over significant budgets, personnel decisions, and long-term operational planning. You have officers who report to you, who have officers who report to them, and the chain of human consequences that flows from your decisions extends further than you can fully track. At this level, you are likely involved in what the KGB called active measures, a term that covered an enormous range of operations designed not just to collect intelligence, but to actively shape reality in ways favorable to Soviet interests. Active measures included disinformation campaigns that planted false stories in foreign newspapers. They included funding and directing political movements in Western countries that would never have suspected Soviet involvement. They included the cultivation of agents of influence, prominent figures in foreign governments, universities, and media organizations who had been carefully turned into instruments of Soviet policy without ever being formally recruited as spies. You oversee operations that will take years to fully execute, that require patience and precision, and an absolute willingness to let people believe things about the world that are completely untrue, because the KGB understood long before the modern era that the most powerful weapon in any intelligence arsenal is not a gun or a listening device, but a carefully constructed narrative. The polkovnik, colonel, is a rank that carries with it a gravity that is visible to everyone around you. You do not need to announce your authority. It precedes you into every room. You are now the head of a major operational department or the senior KGB resident in one of the world's most strategically important cities, perhaps London, Washington, Tokyo, or Beijing, running the full spectrum of Soviet intelligence operations from a position that carries diplomatic immunity and the direct backing of Moscow Center. Your network at this point is not just an intelligence asset, it is a reflection of your entire career, built over decades of careful cultivation, patient investment in human relationships that were always ultimately transactional, and a willingness to make decisions that you never wrote down and never discussed except with people who had just as much reason to keep them secret as you did. The lifestyle at colonel level is exceptional by Soviet standards. You live in a way that most of your countrymen cannot imagine, with access to foreign goods, international travel, and a standard of material comfort that the Soviet system officially condemned as bourgeois decadence while quietly providing it to the men who kept that system alive. But the isolation is also profound. There are very few people in the world you can speak to honestly. Your family knows almost nothing about what you actually do. Your friendships are all, to varying degrees, professional relationships wearing a social disguise. You have spent so long watching other people for signs of disloyalty that the habit has become impossible to turn off, even in your most private moments. The general. There are several general ranks within the KGB structure, from Major General up through Colonel General, and reaching any of them means you have achieved something that almost no one who entered that gray building as a young candidate ever manages. You are now part of the inner architecture of Soviet power itself. You do not simply execute policy. In meaningful ways, you help create it. You sit in meetings where decisions are made that will affect the lives of millions of people who will never know your name. Your influence extends into every corner of Soviet society. The KGB at the general officer level had reach into the military, the party, the scientific establishment, the cultural sphere, and the economy. Nothing of significance happened in the Soviet Union without passing through channels that men at your level controlled or at minimum observed. The paranoia that comes with this position is unlike anything at the lower ranks, because at the general level You are not just a potential target of foreign intelligence services. You are a potential target of other KGB generals, of party factions, of military rivals, all of whom understand that in a system built on surveillance and control, the most dangerous person is always the one who knows the most: the chairman. There were only a handful of men who ever held this title, and to understand what it meant, you need to understand that the chairman of the KGB was in many respects the second most powerful person in the Soviet Union, and in certain periods, arguably the most powerful person of all. Yuri Andropov ran the KGB from 1967 to 1982, before becoming General Secretary of the Communist Party, the leader of the entire Soviet state. That trajectory tells you everything you need to know about what this position actually represented. As chairman, you controlled the most comprehensive surveillance apparatus in human history. You had files on virtually every significant person in the country. You had informants inside every institution. You had the legal authority to arrest, imprison, exile, or in certain circumstances eliminate anyone the state designated as a threat. And you were the person who ultimately defined what that designation meant. The weight of that power is almost impossible to describe from the outside. You were not simply a powerful official in a powerful government. You were the living embodiment of the Soviet state's will to survive, its determination to know everything, control everything, and destroy anything that threatened its continuation. And yet, even at this summit, even holding all of that power in your hands, you were never entirely safe, because the KGB existed in a world where the only law that truly mattered was the law of the man above you. And above the chairman there was always, at least in theory, the party. And the party had its own ways of reminding even the most powerful men exactly where the real limits of their authority ended.